This is English 373, week 5, part 4. This is going really well, actually. Um, so, what was I going to say? Oh, I want to look at this last speech. There's also another creepy aspect to Malcolm and Macduff. This is a little harder for students to grasp, but I figure, like, at the time, I'm going to tell you about it. I don't care. It's sort of interesting. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. But there's another aspect of this that makes it creepy. Malcolm and So Duncan is the king of Scotland. Scotland is a country to the north of England. Um, Duncan is the king of Scotland, and the whole story takes place in Scotland. But Malcolm runs away because his dad gets killed, and he figures he's next because whoever killed the dad wants to be king, so you can't have the next king hanging around without killing him. So Malcolm runs away. He runs to England, which is the country of the south. Macduff, and he starts kind of a rebellion down there. He's getting ready to. He's going to come back and take that throne. Like, yeah, that's exactly what he does. And Macduff realizes Macbeth's a psychopath. This guy's a terrible king. I got to get the fuck out of here. So he runs back to England where Malcolm is and joins the rebellion. Now Malcolm gets soldiers, and Seward, I think, I don't really remember who Seward is, but Seward is, like, part of the English force. Malcolm is essentially borrowing soldiers from England to take back the throne. And so when you see all those soldiers invading, that's because Macbeth is in charge of the army in Scotland. He's the king. All those soldiers aren't all Scottish people who ran away. They're British people English people who have joined up, who are helping Malcolm with the rebellion. And there's this kind of creepy moment in the last speech that, again, you've been watching a play for hours, and and this is a tiny detail, and are even going to notice it. And I don't even know if you remember this, but way back in the first week of this play, when I was talking to you about the titles that Macbeth has, because he's the Thane of Glamis, and then he gets this promotion to the Thane of Cawdor, which is like because the actual Thane of Cawdor was a traitor, and they chop his head off, and they give his title and his land and his power to Macbeth. So Macbeth goes from being Thane of Glamis to Thane of Cawdor. And you forget about that pretty quickly because he becomes king next, and it doesn't really matter what he's Thane of. But Thane is like a title of nobility in Scotland. They don't call them earls and dukes. They call them thanes. Well, Malcolm, when he takes over at the end of the play, this is the very final speech. He says, "We shall not spend a large expense of time before we reckon with your loves and make us even with you, my thanes and kinsmen. Henceforth be earls, the first that ever Scotland in such an honor name." So he says, "My fellow thanes." Oh, I've lost the line. I'm sorry. I already lost it. "My thanes and kinsmen, henceforth be earls," meaning from now on, you're going to be earls. So he's changing their titles. They're not going to be called thanes anymore. They're going to be called earls. What's the difference? Well, there really isn't one, and it's not super important. But the one slight difference is that thanes are what you call nobility in Scotland, and earls are what you call nobility in England. This raises a question. Why is Malcolm retitling everybody with English names instead of Scottish names? Malcolm borrowed an army from England in order to help him take back the Scottish throne. Do you think England is going to be expecting anything nice? Do you think England was just like, "Oh, sure, take all of our soldiers to your little war. You don't owe us anything, buddy. Just go get that throne back"? Or do you think they were like, "Sure, we hate Macbeth. Everybody hates Macbeth because he's a fucking psycho and he just murders people. We will lend you soldiers so you can get your throne back. As long as you promise to be good to England in return." See, I think that there is a part of Malcolm's invasion of Scotland that's a little bit like colonialism. It's essentially what you are witnessing at the end of the play, which again is supposed to be a yay, Scotland is back and the rightful king is back on the throne, becomes a little bit of a like, "Oh, we're so happy that we have men who are totally disconnected from women in charge. This is so much better, even though they're vaguely creepy weirdos. And also, they brought an invading force from another country, and it feels like they're helping England take over Scotland." It's like, because they're using a foreign army to do this, and you gotta think England will be expecting something in return for lending you a whole fucking army and getting a bunch of English soldiers killed in a war in Scotland. So I'm sure they were like, "Sure, we'll lend you the soldiers as long as you do this and this and this and this for us." And the first thing he does, the first fucking thing he does when he's the new king of Scotland is that he's like, okay, we're going to stop calling you guys Thanes and start calling you Earls. This is a little bit the equivalent of like um, America invading a country and being like, okay, you guys all speak English now. We're doing English. No, 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 no more Spanish. We're done with that. We're doing English. English is the official language. You speak English, right? Like it's an invasion, it's a colonization from another country. So these aspects combined make it gives you a funny feeling. Shakespeare has created a situation that gives you a really weird feeling, which is that even though Macbeth and Lady Macbeth are obviously terrible people, I kind of liked them and I thought they were cool in the way that I like Harley Quinn and the Joker. Um, and Malcolm and Macduff are sort of the heroes who save the day and reestablish law and order, but like I don't think they're that good, actually. They're severely disconnected from women, and they're bringing an invading army to colonialize the whole thing. Anyway, that's good. Cool. There's one more speech that I want to go over in Macbeth, and then we're done. Um, I don't. I should. I guess I should have focused on it more. Um, it's it's what Macbeth says when he finds out Lady Macbeth is dead. It is generally considered to be the most important speech in the play, and it is. It's also generally considered to be one of the best speeches in all of Shakespeare, and it is. Um, Although I will say, when you think about the famous Shakespeare speeches, they're often famous. They're famous because they're great, but they're also famous because they're detachable. Like you don't have to know what's going on. You don't have to read the whole play to understand the speech. And a lot of Hamlet speeches are like that. Actually, weirdly, a lot of Hamlet speeches have nothing to do with the play he's in, which is one of the reasons why they're so famous, because you can just take the speech and read it like a poem, because it doesn't ever, sometimes it contradicts the play he's in. Fucking Hamlet, man, that thing. Sorry, there's a line from Hamlet that makes me crazy. Hamlet's most famous speech, to be or not to be, that is the question. Right in the middle of that speech, he talks about death, and he says, death, the undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveler returns. Which means, like, he's talking about death, which is, you know, when you die, you never come back. Which makes sense when you read the speech on its own, but makes absolutely no sense in the play Hamlet, where the entire play is about his dead father coming back to tell him. So, like, it's just, Hamlet. Okay, I'm not dealing with Hamlet. I have a different class where I teach Hamlet. Some of you probably took it. All right, let's take a look at one of Shakespeare's most famous speech. This is up there with Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo, and to be or not to be. This is extremely famous, and it should be. This is Macbeth's response to Lady Macbeth's death. The queen, my lord, is dead. She should have died hereafter. There would have been time for such a word. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time. And all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, out, brief candle. Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Some people have said that this is not a good thing to say when his wife has died. That like it's because he doesn't really say anything about her specifically. I actually think, and some people go, I guess he didn't really care about it that much because of this. He does say she should have died at another time. There would have been, sorry, she should have died hereafter. There would have been time for such a word. Meaning that like he could have said more if she hadn't died, like just as people were invading his castle. It isn't very specific to her as a funeral eulogy, but I actually think it shows how profoundly he loved her. This is basically when she dies, life has no meaning anymore. Like the speech is just about total meaninglessness, and how difficult and impossible it is to kind of like when she is dead, life has no longer any meaning. I'll pick it up in the next video. We can talk about it in more detail. I also I'm going to give you some multiple actors. This is such a famous speech. It's easy to find YouTube clips of people doing it, so I'll include that in the playlist so you can hear different people doing it. Yeah, okay. I'm going to talk about it in the next video, and then we'll be done with Macbeth.